So this is how I color skin on Metabang. First, we're going to lay our base color, and here you see me using the fill tool or the bucket tool to fill in big areas so that I don't have to do that much work. And then I'll take the pen tool and fill in the small spaces that the bucket tool couldn't get to, and that's what you'll see me doing. I'll speed it up a bit. Now that you have your base color, you're going to open up a new color layer on top of your base color. And here you see me winging it. I don't really know color theory, but basically I'm just trying to choose a color to use for her blush / shading, and that's what you'll see me use around here. I'm going to use the pen tool. Well, first it seems I started to use the airbrush tool. You'll see me switch to the pen tool in a few seconds. You'll see that I go back, and then I'm going to just end up using the pen tool to map out all the areas where I want the shading / the blush to be, and that's what you're going to see me do for this entire section. So once you have all your mapping down, you're going to take the blur tool and just blur everything out. I also use the airbrush tool in this section just to get any smaller spots where I want more detail maybe, and that's what I do in this step. Once everything is done and blurred out, I'm going to open a new color layer and just, add a darker shading / blush over what I just did, just so that the color pops more and there's a variation of color. In this section, I also use the airbrush tool a lot, and sometimes the blur tool as well. Once we're done with that, we're going to open up yet another color layer, but this color layer will be set to add. There's a little tab that says normal, just set that to add, and this is how we'll be doing our highlights. I use the watercolor wet tool, as well as blur later on, and airbrush tool, again just for smaller details. But yeah, basically I just start mapping out where I want the highlights to go, and with the blur tool I'll blur these out, and also with smaller places where I just want an airbrush effect, I will use the airbrush tool. I also didn't mention this, but make sure that all your layers on top of your base color layer is set to clipping. It just makes life easier so that all your colors aren't all over the place and you can see where everything is going. As you can see here, I also make sure to lower my opacity on this layer so that my highlights aren't too bright and it looks semi-normal. Once I'm done with highlights, I go back to the base color layer and add a color layer on top of that, just because I want to go in and color the palm a lighter color. When working with darker skin tones, the palm is always going to be lighter. So I wanted to incorporate that into my art and, just include that as well. So you guys can include this if you want to be more accurate, but you also don't have to. This is just my own personal step to add. And when I do this, I'm using the pen tool. Eventually I do go back to the shading layers and I change it to a different color, just because I feel like this dark orange shade on her lighter palm doesn't really work well. Okay, all you're gonna see me do now is just lower the opacity on these two shading layers because I thought they were too dark. And that's all for the tutorial. I hope you guys learned something today. Have a great one.